Hello, I am Joseph the Moral Philosopher, and today I'm going to recreate the meme where the guy's pointing at the thread on the chart and he's like, we're going to talk about this chart, which represents my moral system. It's not my moral system, right? I am trying to systematize what I believe is objective morality, right? This chart is kind of the guide to that. My moral philosophy is going to be based on this, and I don't know if you're going to be able to actually read this in the video. It's okay, I'm going to point and talk and it'll make sense, okay, even if you don't see it. We've got two triforces essentially, right? So if you're a Legend of Zelda fan like myself, well, that's a good chunk of the inspiration for how I came up with this, at least the initial idea. We have two pyramids, triforces. Technically, the middle is filled in two, so it's not a triforce. There's four. What quad force? That doesn't sound good. Anyway, and then there's 8, so it's anyways. We have our chart. We have the top pyramid, the bottom pyramid. The top pyramid pointing up, the bottom pyramid pointing down. We are right here in the middle. You probably can't read this, but in the middle I have perceptions and emotions. This is part of how we process the world. We perceive things, and then we have emotion to that. And then from there, we take an action, or we don't take an action, but those are our motivating things that are going to make us act, lead to action. So we sit in the middle. We move up the chart, good things, positive outcomes. If we move down the chart, bad things, negative outcomes. Up is moral things, down is immoral things. Each triangle represents what I call a meta virtue, or the bottom ones, they represent a meta vice. Okay, what does that mean? It means it's a virtue that has aspects to it. So it's not just one virtue, but it's multiple virtues. At the bottom of our triangle, so we'll go up first. We have our base of our triangle, left side is wisdom. When we act upon wisdom, that's going to be prudence. That's what I call wise caution most of the time. If we're wise, we'll have humility. That's on here too. Okay, so we have the opposite side, which is temperance. This is going to be our ability to restrain impulsive tendencies. It's going to be a restraint on our thinking, our emotions, our words, our actions, and it's going to be our discipline. So it's going to be our ability to take action, not just to stop ourselves from doing stupid things, but to actually do good things with intention. That's going to be temperance. In the middle here, we have mindfulness. Mindfulness is going to be our awareness of our emotions, for example, because our emotions will lead us to take action. Mindfulness is the awareness of the emotion. We combine that with the wisdom of knowing what emotions are, how we want to react off of those emotions. Then we can take prudent action. Prudent action will be benevolent action, which is at the top of our triangle. So, top of the triangle is the goal. Benevolence. This is doing good things generally we think of it as doing good things to other people. Being good is the same as being benevolent. Meta virtues. So I said all these are meta virtues. So let me explain that a bit. So wisdom is going to have different aspects. This is going to be our ability to have foresight. It's going to be our ability to have insight. It's going to be our critical thinking skills. Generally, it's going to be our understanding of something. So that includes having knowledge, but wisdom in general is the ability to apply that knowledge. If we can apply knowledge we have, we would call that understanding. So wisdom and understanding, practically the same thing. If when we actually apply that into action, we would call that being prudent. Okay, then let's move over to temperance. Temperance is going to be most of the classic virtues, a lot of the classic virtues, especially like Aristotle. For example, courage is going to be an act of temperance. It is going to be a restraint on fear, and it is going to be the intentional action in spite of that fear to do what needs to be done. So that would be courage. Not every virtue falls under temperance, but any virtue that is about restraining an emotion. So let's use anger as another example. Fear and anger. Fear is our runaway response. Anger is our fight response. So temperance would be restraining our anger so that we don't do unnecessary harm. It's a restraint so that we can apply our wisdom to ensure that the thing that's made us angry is actually rational, that the thing is the perception is accurate. Mindfulness is kind of awareness of that. So there's going to be different types of mindfulness. That's why I call it a meta virtue. There's going to be mindfulness over your thoughts, over your emotions. It is going to be mindfulness over your physical position relative to the rest of the world. It is going to be mindfulness of situational awareness. It's going to be understanding how other people are interacting with each other. So mindfulness in general is just awareness. And each category of awareness could be considered a virtue, a separate sub-virtue of mindfulness as the total. Typically, we think of mindfulness as more inside, but it's both. It's just awareness. Be mindful of your surroundings. Eastern philosophy is more introspective. Both mindfulness. And then at the top of the triangle, we have benevolence. This would be taking a tempered action, right? We're using temperance to have the discipline to take an action, not by accident, but with intent. And so that would be benevolence. If we accidentally do something good, we could have just as easily accidentally did something bad. So without the base of wisdom, temperance, and mindfulness, we can't act with benevolence with any intention. And we more likely won't. And I'll explain when we go to the bottom of the chart why that is. I do have a list of some of our benevolent virtues. So this is altruism, charity, honesty, kindness, mercy, justice. All of these things are each of those have the intention to ensure the survivability and prosperity generally, right? Even mercy is going to be, we're going to mercy on somebody who maybe did something wrong because we're going to respect their life as well. At the top, I wrote good, right? At the top, moving up, yes, good. Good is what serves life. So we move up this, we serve life. Prosperity is how easy and how the longevity, more survival, I guess. So it's the ease in which we survive. That's kind of our ultimate good at the top. Those are things that are conducive to that are positive outcomes. Good thoughts, good words, good actions, or good deeds if you want to be Zoroastrian about it. I did kind of rip that off. It's a good philosophy, at least that aspect. I'm not familiar with the whole thing, but I like that. We end up with positive outcomes. It brings us back to the middle. We will have a perception of the outcome, and then we will have an emotion, which is our feedback emotions. Those are going to be, did the outcome make us happy? If it was a good thing, it probably will. If it doesn't, and it was a good thing, then that's irrational. But if it's a rational thing, good thing happened, we feel good about it. This could be happiness in general. Proudness, I use the word proudness instead of pride because pride has sinful connotations in Christianity and stuff, and you can be proud of something without being prideful. So proudness is the feedback emotion that, oh, I did a good thing and I feel good about myself. Therefore, we're motivated to do those things again. We learn from that experience. That's going to be our wisdom, which allows us to continue to do good things on purpose, right? Okay, now let's look at the bottom of the chart. Although I said we start in the middle, technically we start kind of down. bottom triangles, we have on the left side ignorance. Right next to that in the middle, we have selfishness. That is the starting position of all humans. You are born knowing nothing. You have no wisdom, you have no knowledge, you have only instinct. Your instinct is to cry because that gives me attention and that gets me fed and I survive. I'm hungry, I cry, parents come see me. And we do that, some of us do that for too long, right? You cry. Crying in general is help me, I need something. I am dependent on someone else in this situation, therefore I will cry to bring attention to myself. Crying happens before we have the ability to speak. And so, as we get older, we can ask for things instead of just crying and then parents trying to guess, well, I have no idea what the kid wants. Is it the diaper? Is it the food? Are they uncomfortable? Do they just want some social connection? All right, so ignorance is our starting place. When we are ignorant, I have hubris and arrogance written in there. Those words are used interchangeably. I use them to mean two specific things. I call together conceitedness, but hubris is we think we know more than we do, and arrogance is I think I'm capable of more than I am. So one is overconfidence in, or unjustified, irrational confidence. It's confidence that's not backed up by reality. So this is people who think they can fight and they can't because they actually have no experience whatsoever, and they have no reason to think that. So they will, and if they think they can, then that's arrogance. The opposite of humility, which humility we learn from failure. If we go down the triangle, bad thing, we will fail when we are ignorant, when we are ill-tempered, which is on our far right side of our triangle here. So those things will result in failure, which if we have some wisdom, we will learn, oh, I need to do better, and that's humility. Humility is the opposite of our hubris, arrogance. I don't want to get too much into that. Let's keep going through the triangle. So we have selfishness. This is going to be, I don't intend to do wrong to anybody necessarily, but it's more self-focused. It's I put it opposite of mindfulness because it's almost like obliviousness to the needs of others. It is very self-centered. It's like, oh, I'm going to take that. Think of a 2-year-old grabbing a toy and just like, I want that toy, and they just take it from somebody else. They don't have understanding of possession and property and things like that. It is me, me, me. They don't see the world outside of selfishness. They have to learn that over time. Then we have ill-temperance. This is going to be the opposite of self-restraint, of discipline. This could be laziness. This is like, I just don't want to do anything. Not having motivation. Now that's a little bit different, but this is like maybe having the motivation and just not the resolve. Resoluteness is going to be the emotion that leads to tempered actions, disciplined actions. Okay, so it could be a lack of that. So you're just not going to do things because you have no motivation. That could be ill-temperance. And then more often it's impulsive, or have rashness written down over here. This is, we have something that makes us act impulsively, right? So if somebody bumps into us and we automatically go into fight mode, and we're like, all right, we'll put, take it as disrespect, or you just automatically get angry because your body just got hit by something. It doesn't know if it's an accident or not. What it knows is it could be a threat. And so anger, right, there we go. Anger is the reaction to that. It might not be rational. It's only rational if there is a threat. So if it's irrational, then having temperance allows us to use our wisdom to determine whether something was rational and we should act in a certain way. It also allows restraint, so we don't overreact to a situation. So ill-temperance is the lack of ability to do that, or I say lack of ability, but essentially it is all virtues and vices, are skills. You could call them skills because you will get better over time at doing certain things, but I would call it more habitual, which means habit. It is a habit. So if you do good things, it will become habit to do good things. If you do bad things, it will become habit to do bad things. Ill-temperance would be the inability to break those habits once you notice them, but you only notice them if you're mindful. So you have to have mindfulness to notice habitually immoral or bad things, and then you have to make the conscious choice. You have to get up that emotion of resoluteness, of resolve to act tempered and counteract those things. Okay, and then we've gone to the top three. Our bottom one is malevolence. So this is evil. This is doing bad things with intention. It's not even to be self-serving, although it can be. Malevolence is hate, and mostly hate. It starts from anger, resentment, leads to hate, right? Malevolence is you want to destroy, you want to cause harm and suffering to others. That's the intention. Now, on the top triangle, the bottom layer supported benevolence. The bottom layer is the opposite, right? I know it's upside down, so gravity doesn't work that way. But malevolence is supported by ignorance and selfishness and ill-temperance, right? You can do perceivably malevolent things despite not having malevolent intentions, right? So you can do an evil thing even if you don't intend to. That could be because you was ignorant. That could be because you was selfish and you just wasn't thinking about other people. It could be ill-temperance where you acted rashly and I didn't have that restraint on that impulse. And those will result in the same bad things, except for if you're malevolent, you intend to do those things. So a malevolent person is much worse than this ignorant, selfish, ill-tempered starting point that we start in, and it is intentionally doing that. Now, do some of the people who act malevolent do it because they think they're doing the right thing? Absolutely. That's where ignorance comes from. Sometimes selfishness too, those can apply together. If you're selfish, you're also ignorant. Otherwise, you wouldn't be selfish generally. We live in an interdependent society, so if you act selfish, you will be excluded from some social benefits. So you actually hurt yourself by acting selfish in that way. So, and then malevolence is the same thing. Malevolence, you hurt yourself by hurting other people because you're taking away the society that you benefit from. Now, you need a whole video on malevolence and how the psychology of that works. Generally, I'm going to use a term coined, I'm going to forget the name. I got it from John Vervaeke. He's a cognitive scientist. Yes. And he got the term reciprocal narrowing from, I'm sorry, I forgot his name. The book I'm working on, I have both of their names mentioned from this idea. Reciprocal narrowing it essentially is the idea that the more bad things you do, the less opportunities you have, which means you will do more bad things because you don't have an opportunity to do good things otherwise. So you can't help people a lot of times if people don't trust you. So if you've done bad things and you've broken trust, then they might not accept your help. So, well, maybe you just do the opposite. That would be an example. Addiction is the source of that idea. Man, I wish I remember his name. But he wrote a book. He was talking about this concept applied to addiction. So the more you, get addicted to certain drugs, right, the less opportunity you're going to have, and then the going back to that drug is going to happen more because you have less opportunity to do other things because of the choices you made. It works the opposite too. So if you do good things, you have more opportunities to allow for good things. So people who get in really bad places is because each action compounds on each other and moves them down and even change their perspective on life, which is going to lead them down the triangle instead of up the triangle. So a lot of whether you choose to go up and down is not just your ignorance, wisdom, it is also kind of your mindfulness and the accuracy of that to make sure you understand the world accurately. When you don't understand the world accurately, you're more likely to do negative things and be malevolent for irrational reasons. You don't fix your problems, this becomes where it's a vengeance thing. It's like, I'm going to get it back I'm going to hurt these people because they hurt me. That doesn't make your life better. It actually will probably most likely make your life worse. This is why I'm on YouTube, and some of these ideas I want to convey are not, they're frowned upon. I don't know. I'm not monetized anyways. What am I talking about? I'm a new channel. I'm not monetized. Someone just talked about it. Right, some mass shooters and people like that, a lot of times, right, it's murder-suicide, right? They kill everybody else, and they're like, well, that didn't solve anything, and my life will be worse if I keep living, so I kill myself too. And so those are not, it's not selfish, because it's not actually beneficial. It's malevolent. It's a hate for others. It's a hate for self. Or it's the reciprocal narrowing, where you've left yourself with no other choice, that the outcome, you've done something so bad that no matter what you do, the outcome will be negative for you. So you, cowardice or irresponsibility, you don't accept responsibility, you don't try to atone, maybe you don't think you can, and then you end up down, all the way down, bad, bad at the bottom. Okay? Now, this is why I put so much emphasis on things like mercy and kindness, and I talk about justice a lot. In the book I'm writing, justice will come up a lot. What that means. It has to be done with mercy. It has to have the ability to forgive people who are genuinely trying to atone. Otherwise, there's no reason for them to not act bad. Have I explained this triangle, my pyramid, well enough? I think maybe I have, right? So if we get all the way to the bottom, negative outcomes will lead to negative emotions, and something to consider there is if your actions, this is the rational versus irrational, if your actions cause the negative outcome, but then you blame others, then the actions will continue. That's probably ignorance, okay? That's most likely what it is, and it's a lack of humility, which comes from wisdom. So we need to learn, those are things we have to learn. We learn wisdom from other people, and then sometimes we learn it from our experience. But we learn a lot of things from others as a child, and that's the job of our parents and our society, our teachers, and everybody who's trying to help us gain wisdom. The problem is, if the people trying to teach us aren't wise themselves, then they can't pass on wisdom. So that's why you end up with families, for example, that constantly they're in bad positions in life because, well, it's not necessarily genetic. It's that who teaches kids other than the parents. So if the parents are messing up, then the kids are going to learn to mess up as well, and that will be a bad cycle until somebody breaks the cycle. And it can happen the opposite. If your family is doing good things, you will learn, oh, I should do good things, and you will do good things, and then it becomes generational. And so the only way you fix a negative situation like that is with the wisdom and humility. One of the best ways to learn that is failure. Eventually, if you're smart enough, you're going to say, oh, the reason I keep failing is because I need to do something different. Even if that is not true, that's going to be more beneficial than the opposite, I think. Maybe that's not exactly right, but that means if you work to improve yourself as if things are your fault, things will get better. Because you can't necessarily affect things around you. You can to some extent, but only to a small degree. And that is when we get into conversations about resentment and what we're supposed to do with that, and dialogue and persuasion and free speech issues. And I've talked about this in some other videos. Resentment will come up a lot. that's when resentment is for when other people are doing wrong things to us or to others. Then we solve that, but we have to do that with prudence. Otherwise, um, if we aren't prudent when we do that, particularly if you're in a place that doesn't allow free speech and things like that, then sometimes doing those things are going to result in bad things for you. They could result in good things for everybody else. And then you get the idea of altruism, really selflessness in some ways. But if you do things, if you try to do good things and they result in bad things, then you failed in some way. So if you intend to do good, but you fail, you have done bad things, you have a vice of some sort. It is going to be ignorance, usually ignorance, could be ill-temperance, could be selfishness. So it just depends. If the outcome, so morality is objective. If the outcome is good, then unless it was just coincidental, then the virtue is what got you there. Okay, if the outcome is bad, vice is what got you there. If you intend to do good things, but you fail, then you're missing something down. You did one of these things in the bottom. You were ignorant in some way. This could be a skill issue. So it could be ignorance in the ability to do the good thing that you want. This gets us into the ideas of skill, knowledge, competency, efficiency, things like that. That is stuff we learn, but only if we're open-minded and humble, and it moves us up the chart. This, in a nutshell, is my philosophy on my moral philosophy, right? Now, some of it, I've talked about the emotion to some extent, so I'm trying to put this in a book. The book is mostly done, but I'm still fixing some things as I go. Arranging it is the most difficult thing, but that's difficult because the ideas are very interconnected. So how we perceive is a good chunk. It's probably like an opening chapter in the book. It's a pretty good chunk. I talk about how we actually perceive the world, how our brains work, how thinking and processing work. So I think the chapter is titled like perception and processing or something like that. And that is going to help us have wisdoms to be mindful in particular ways. And so then the emotions are kind of the roots. It is the driving factor of how we make a decision. So every time we have an emotion, it is because we have an unfulfilled need. If we understand what that need is, we can start to think, like with the anger example, if anger is our fight response against a threat, then we can say, hey, when I'm angry, is there an actual threat on me? Do I need to defend myself with force? If not, then the anger is irrational. But there's related things like frustration and irritation and resentment, and those things are all related, but they're not quite the same. So all those get explained in the book, and each restraint on an emotion is going to be temperance. So for example, mercy could be used on the anger, right? We could restrain that. I call it immediate justice, which it is justice, but it requires mercy. So that's just kind of some examples of how that works. So when I lay out the book, we're going to talk about perception processing. We're going to talk about emotions. And the idea is to learn not just the practices of wisdom, mindfulness, temperance, so that we can act benevolent. I'm explaining why that is good objectively. Something I haven't talked about a whole lot in this video. I've just kind of taken as the assumption. A lot of people disagree with that. Some of them don't think morality is objective because they think life is meaningless and it's pointless and it's whatever we want. But the neat thing is there are going to be outcomes whether or not we believe in them or not. If I jump, I come back down because of gravity. If I don't believe in gravity, gravity still works on me. Morality is no different. Okay, you just have to have an objective first principle. You have to have a source to base that morality on. But once you have that, that's an issue for another video. But once you have that, then you can actually present an objective moral framework, which is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to tie the philosophy of virtues with the psychology of emotions, with the cognitive science of how we actually perceive and process the world, and then with the wisdom to know when we do these things, what are the reactions of that. And this is what I call pathways for every emotion or every stimulus, everything that encourages us to take an action. We have a pathway. We can take a virtuous action, a viceful action, or we can take no action at all, which could be virtuous or viceful depending on the circumstance. What determines the objective morality of that? Did we have a positive outcome? Did we have a negative outcome? How do we define positive and negative? This is what I started the video with. Does it serve life, or is it counter to serving life? Why is that my objective standard? That is because we're all alive. We're humans. We are humans. We are alive. All of us. Every one of us. So what is the one thing we all have in common? Is that we're living and that we are designed to live. That's a whole other section on the biology of the evolutionary science of this is kind of the grounding science that I use to argue my point is based on biological evolution. And if you don't believe that and you have faith, then that's fine too, because you'll end up in the same place generally. Most moral systems end up in the same things. I'm not saying things new. I'm just trying to explain them in a new way. I, in different videos, will try to apply specific virtues and vices and sometimes the psychology into those situations. So I have some videos already on that. That is kind of the point of this channel, is to explain less analytically like I'm doing now, but more application. How does this actually apply in the real world? That takes wisdom, that takes information. So if my information that I have is wrong, then I will give a wrong assessment. That's the hard part. So that's why benevolence is supported by wisdom and not the other way around. We can't be benevolent if we aren't wise. So if I'm not wise enough to follow my own system, that's likely that I will fail some ways, as will all of you. This is tying to Christianity. I think original sin is actually ignorance. That's my opinion. I might write a thing on that, but that's kind of my opinion on the thing. This is the starting state of humanity, ignorant, and ignorance leads us down here. But it's also not just ignorance. It's selfishness and ill-temperance. That's our starting state. So we only get out of that through wisdom. We're kind of floating in that state and trying to overcome it the whole time. So if you like this video, hit the like button. Subscribe. I'm going to be talking about this. If you have objections and hate everything I said, tell me about it in the comments. Because you matter too. How's that? I will see you guys in the next video. I won't see you. You'll see me, because that's how videos work.